In this video, we will be looking at features and functions of the Mirage 2000C that can be utilised during air-to-air interception. We will go over some features of the RDI radar and VTB not touched upon in our previous tutorials, use of the low frequency pulse repetition mode or BFR, introduce the télé-affichage or TAF automated GCI function, touch on HUD symbology for IFF and rules of engagement, and look at the designation objectif or manual objective designator function. Hello fellow virtual aviators, we are back in the legendary and lethal Mirage 2000C, and today we are looking at some interception techniques and some additional features of the RDI radar and VTB. It's a bright and still morning over the southern Levant. We have just passed over Jerusalem, about 15 nautical miles west of the Dead Sea, and we are flying south on a patrol towards the Gulf of Aqaba. At the same time, unbeknownst to me, enemy fighters and strike aircraft are heading towards us from over the Sinai to the west, threatening the Ramon and Ovda airbases. We have already looked at the principles of using the RDI radar for air-to-air search and acquisition. If you are not familiar with these topics, I would recommend you revisit our tutorial on their use. We are now going to move on to some more advanced radar features, together with the awesome TAF GCI data link and VTB target designation functions, which are great for improving your interception techniques. Today's tutorial is not necessarily about tactics, but rather how you can incorporate these techniques during your combat air patrols. So we'll start with a few basic features we didn't touch on in our tutorial on beyond visual range air-to-air radar. Firstly, radar presentation. As you can see here, the radar is switched on and functioning in Resh bar search mode. If you are more familiar with airframes such as the F-16 Viper or the FA-18 Hornet, you may be more comfortable with the radar scope image being presented as what is known as a B-scope. The default and usual setting in the Mirage 2000C is PPI, Plan Position Indicator, which shows a more geographically accurate picture of radar returns in a cone shape beaming from the nose of the aircraft, but uses less of the VTB screen. By switching to B-scope mode using this switch here, the radar image is stretched to fit the screen, so instead of a cone, the radar scan area is presented as a square. It is personal preference which you use, as apart from the presentation, the radar works in exactly the same way. The B-scope may be more beneficial for discerning multiple targets which are close to you, but like certain map projections, their geographical position relative to yourself becomes skewed and may be misleading. The horizontal line at the top of the VTB represents the scan of the radar antenna. The vertical dotted lines are azimuth guides, with the two on the left and right representing 30 degrees either side of your aircraft. All other VTB radar symbology remains the same. Whether in PPI or B-scope presentation, one of the issues with the Mirage 2000C's RDI radar is its display of spurious contacts. When in the standard high-frequency repetition mode, the raw radar returns are discerned and filtered, and then presented on the VTB as chevron contacts. Put simply, the radar is looking for changes in the returns relative to the background, the Earth and the sky, during each sweep, and if it thinks it has detected one, it displays a chevron. The radar is not an artificial intelligence, however, and will occasionally make a mistake by presenting a chevron when an object isn't there. Usually, these spurious contacts only last for one sweep of the radar antenna and typically have a low quoted closure rate, but nevertheless they can become an annoyance and a distraction when searching for targets. There are two ways to reduce these spurious contacts. The first is the hardened noise gate, which is selected using this button here marked A. When this is selected, a yellow A will appear on the VTB and the radar applies increased filtering to its raw data. This will remove most spurious contacts, but has the disadvantage of accidentally removing true contacts at longer ranges. In short, it gives you a truer picture, but a shorter range radar. Switching the noise gate off, and you will see that spurious contacts begin to reappear. The second method is by using the Doppler filter switch here. The switch has three settings: with or avec, without or sans, and automatic. With the Doppler filter applied in the with position, this will reduce spurious contacts and also have the added benefit of resisting enemy chaff when guiding Super 530D missiles. However, as a trade-off because of how the filter works, the chance of losing a lock on an enemy due to notching increases. The opposite occurs with the Doppler filter switched off in the without position. This may result in lots of spurious contacts, but aids in notch resistance. As you can see here with the filter switched off, the VTB screen is filled with spurious contacts. In automatic mode, the radar will automatically apply the filter if the raw return from the main lobe is too high. Remember that in high-frequency repetition mode, the chevrons on the VTB do not show the direction of travel of the contact, but indicate the closure rate relative to yourself. If you find yourself needing to discern a contact's direction of travel, this can be done using the persistence or remanence switch. First, switch the radar scan pattern to a one-bar search, and then switch on persistence mode by placing the switch marked store or remanence in the R position. Now, when we are detecting a return in Resh bar search mode, the previous two sweeps are displayed as small horizontal lines, and from this we can extrapolate the target's trajectory. This contact here is travelling hot towards me. This is also useful for deciding whether a contact is spurious or not, as true contacts will display a trajectory. The disadvantage of this is that it can only be performed in a one-bar search, so it may be more difficult to locate the contact in the first place. Up until now, we have been using our radar exclusively in high-frequency repetition mode. As already stated, the radar is looking for changes in raw returns relative to the background during each sweep, and if it thinks it has detected one, it displays a chevron on the VTB. This presents a challenge for all radars. If an object has a very low closure rate, or is travelling tangential to you, in other words notching you, the radar may not detect a large enough change relative to the background, and so would not display a contact chevron. A sneaky enemy aircraft could use this to try and avoid you. One way around this is to switch to low repetition frequency mode, or BFR. This results in the raw radar return signals being displayed on the VTB instead of chevrons, up to a range of approximately 40 nautical miles. To change over to BFR mode, we use this switch here, placing it in the aft position. If I zoom out, you will see that the radar presentation is as normal. Changing over to BFR. And you can see that the radar is now presenting raw returns on the VTB. Targets must be sought out by adjusting the sensitivity of the radar, and this is done by adjusting this gain switch here. I'm currently set to a range scale of 80 miles, but remember the BFR only works to approximately 40 miles. And what I'm looking for is a bright return arc which represents an object. So I think I can see one there at just below 40 miles. You see, as the radar passes over, a radar return appears. Something difficult to spot, but you just have to get used to knowing what to look for. By adjusting the gain switch, you may get a better view of it. But, however, be aware that it can increase ground clutter, which is the noise being displayed on the screen there. So you're looking for a sweet spot in the gain. Adjust it as desired. You're going to need a little bit of experimentation to find out which is best, so you can see the contacts that you need to. It takes some getting used to, and sometimes you have to concentrate hard to spot the targets, but thankfully this target is appearing as a bright return, so I can be pretty confident there's something there. Notice please, however, that if I switch back to high frequency repetition, there is no chevron at the target's location. The radar is not convinced as the target has a slow closure rate. So under other conditions I may have actually missed this target. Placing the pulse repetition switch into the central position gives us ONT, or interleaved mode, which overlays both high frequency and low frequency modes with each sweep of the radar. At 40 nautical miles, I have detected another target displayed as both a chevron and a raw return. The extensive green return you can see intermittently is just ground clutter. You need to learn to just ignore that. So I'm going to intercept the near target that is only appearing on my low repetition sweep. Now, I had reason to believe this was a friendly aircraft, so I have approached it for inspection and can see a fat belly, a big tail and a high wing. It's a C-130 Hercules. It was travelling due east as I was travelling due south, hence the closure rate was slow and I wasn't picking it up in high repetition mode. Still, that didn't stop us finding it. One of the most enjoyable tasks to perform in DCS World is to work with a GCI controller for guiding you to an interception. There are plenty of fantastic online multiplayer servers out there, but sometimes a GCI is simply unavailable. That's where the Mirage 2000C's TAF function comes in, one of my favourite features of this module. TAF, or télé-affichage, is a radio-based system whereby an AI-simulated GCI controller can remotely send data to your onboard systems, which then displays the interception information on the VTB to guide you towards your target. Essentially, it is a visually displayed bra call. Human players with LOT ATC Advanced can also send this information when acting as a GCI, but it is much more common to use the built-in AI GCI controller. To use TAF, we are going to tune to a particular channel. In DCS World, these channels are automatically generated in the mission editor for friendly bases, early warning radars, and search radars attached to SAM installations. In my current scenario, the airbases Ramon and Ovda are set as friendly, so will automatically generate a TAF GCI. Also, here on the coast, I have an early warning radar installation, so again a TAF GCI channel will automatically be generated for it. Okay, so TAF utilizes our UHF red radio, so the first thing I'm going to do is prepare it for its use. All I need to do is place the red radio's operation mode switch into the F1 position. So let's zoom in on the panel and switch it over to F1. This slaves the red radio to the Centre de Détection et de Commandement, or the CDC panel, something we will look at shortly. The available TAF channels are found on the kneeboard, so if we bring up the kneeboard and cycle to the TAF channel page, you will see we have 3 available options. Channel 1 is X-Ray Victor 49er, which is the name of our coastal early warning radar, and channels 2 and 3 are Ramon and Ovda air bases respectively. In this scenario, I'm going to select channel 2 as if I have been given orders to defend Ramon air base. The channel is selected on the CDC panel here on the right console. We can see a small LCD display and a selector knob, which we are going to use to select channel 2. It may take a few seconds to pick up the signal, but you will know you have by an audible ringtone, and the initials TEL, standing for telemetry, will appear on the VTB. This means we have received information about a potential interception target. Now, in order to display the information, I need to select a weapon for interception. In other words, let's select the Super 530D missile. And when we do so, we will see that on the PCA panel that TAF is one of the available options. So if we select that, we will immediately see some information has appeared on the VTB. The contact that is being proposed as my target by the TAF GCI is marked by a yellow T together with a vector arrow and number, indicating its direction of travel and its B angle. If the proposed target is outside the radar's range scale setting, for example reducing the scale to 80 miles, a yellow azimuth line points towards the target. The AI GCI has proposed this target based on a simple threat algorithm relative to the location of the TAF channel you have selected. The information at the top of the VTB, just like in PSID and PSIC radar use, relates to the proposed target and has been sent by the TAF GCI. This is the target's speed in Mach number. This is the target's heading in degrees true. This is the closure rate between you and the target in combined knots. This is the target's barometric altitude in hundreds of feet, in other words 20,000 feet. And this is the number of distinct radar returns in the target group. In other words, there are 2 aircraft in this flight. The text is yellow to remind you that this is information on a designated target that has been sent by the TAF GCI, and does not refer to an aircraft that is radar locked by ourselves. That would be in green text. Interception information is given at the bottom of the VTB and relates to our own aircraft. The yellow vector arrow shows the recommended heading I should fly in order to intercept the proposed target. This is exceedingly useful if your target is not traveling hot towards you. Remember that the green vector arrow refers to our current direction of travel. The suggested heading is also repeated on the heading tape by this yellow caret. This is the speed in Mach number the TAF GCI recommends I travel at, indicated also by the length of the yellow vector arrow. This is the recommended altitude for the interception. Sometimes these are quite wild suggestions and often I will ignore them. The green numbers next to these are my actual current values for speed and altitude. If we so desire, we can hide the majority of this TAF information using the declutter switch here. You can see here that it is just left behind the yellow TAF T marker. and the number of aircraft in the group. Pressing the switch again will return all the information to view. So, using the TAF information, we're going to turn onto an intercept course for this group and go and investigate. So let's turn to the right. I could, if I wanted to, set my HSI's mode to DTL, or TEL in the French cockpit. Doing so also presents the interception heading here on the HSI. Although I don't find this as particularly useful, I prefer to simply refer to the VTB. Okay, so I'm now on interception heading and at interception speed. I'm still slightly too low compared to the recommended altitude, but we'll forego that. I've also just set my radar to silent to make myself less detectable. I'm going to refer to the TAF GCI's information until I'm well within firing range of my Super 530Ds, and then I'm going to pounce on them, turning my radar back on and quickly locking before they have time to react. Let's hope it works. There's something about the MiG-21 fish bed, it just looks evil. So here we go, the target is roughly 20 nautical miles away, so let's turn our radar back on. There they are, quickly get the lock and engage them. Splash one. Quickly pick up the second target. Oh, there he is. Come on, track that mother. Splash two. The audible sound, what I call the ringtone, sounds each time the TAF information is updated. In addition to the information shown on the VTB, the TAF GCI transmits rules of engagement based on the situation you are heading into, and this is displayed on the heads-up display. Here I can see lib, L-I-B, displayed on the left of the HUD above the weapon information. This stands for libre, the French word for free, or in other words, engage at will. There are no Allied aircraft within 20 nautical miles of the target. The other possible rules are IFF, in other words, use IFF interrogation to establish if the target is friendly. VIS, VIS, establish visual identification on the target as there are friendlies close by. And INT, INT, or interdit, the French word for forbidden. Hold your fire as there are friendlies merged with the target. Looks like there's some friendlies in the mix. Let's go and investigate. Pesky enemy fish beds are in the mix with friendly Mirage F1s. We better head over there and help them out. Now, you can't see this, but I'm using my separate MFD displays to designate the target, so you can't see the VTB, but trust me, I'm designating the target. And I'm going to use my Mode 4 IFF to interrogate him, something we've seen in our previous video. On the HUD, when I am interrogating a target, a horizontal line appears below the radar lock symbology. If the target does not return the correct coded signal and is therefore an enemy, the radar square will remain empty. However, there are two other possibilities. If an uppercase A appears in the radar box, this means you are interrogating a friendly. A stands for ami, or the French word for friend. If an uppercase D appears, this means that a friendly reply has been received, but the position of the replying aircraft does not correspond with the locked target. In other words, the return is doubtful, and there are likely friendly aircraft merged with the target. Let's continue on. I'm sure we will see all three examples in this engagement. Straight away, D for doubtful. We have friendlies merged with the enemies. I'm now picking up A for ami, friendly, and back to D. So there's definitely a need to visually identify the target here. Let's switch over to magic missiles and we'll try and establish visually which are the enemies. So hold down the IFF interrogate button. Friendly. That looks like a Mirage. Yes, that's a fish bed. Very distinctive shape. Come on, you swine. Get in, Splash One. Oh, better drop the tank, the reservoir pendulaire. IFF'd and visually identified, definitely a fish bed. Haha, Splash 2. Another great feature of the Mirage 2000C is its designation objectif, or manual objective designator. This is used in situations where a forward air controller has spotted an enemy aircraft and wants to relay its parameters to you for an interception. We can then manually input these parameters to create our own yellow ghost contact on the VTB. In the next scenario, an enemy Su-25 Frogfoot has been spotted by an observer near Ovda Airbase, which is located near to my preset waypoint 1. The observer has managed to estimate the enemy's speed and altitude. Manual objective designation is performed on the VTB using the 8 switches flanking either side. Let us imagine that it is mission protocol to send enemy aircraft's parameters to the pilot using a set radio procedure that we will invent here.
Reiver 1-1, after control, stand by for objective designation.
When I am ready to input the information, I initialize the manual objective designation procedure by moving the first switch into the up position. After control, Reiver 1-1 ready to receive.
Reiver 1-1, group after waypoint 0001, 12,000, heading 272, speed approximately 400 knots, report 90 seconds, type Frogfoot.
I now need to input this information into the VTB. The yellow text next to each switch indicates which parameter is adjusted. As stated earlier, the reference waypoint 1 corresponds to Ovda Airbase. So we're going to set this with the N switch, a switch we have used before. Set that to 1. The Greek letter rho represents the range from the waypoint that the target was spotted, and this was quoted as 1 nautical mile, so let's change that to 1. The Greek letter theta represents the bearing from the reference. This was 0, 0, 0, in other words, due north. So these two parameters indicate the position at which the target was spotted. C stands for cap, or heading. The heading of the aircraft was measured at being 272 degrees true, so let's set that. Z, if you think of XYZ, Z is the altitude, and this was 12,000 feet, so the number is quoted in hundreds of feet, so we'll set that to 120. The speed of the target was quoted as 400 knots, which is approximately 0.6 Mach, so the M is the speed in Mach number, Mach 0.6. We were also told that the report was 90 seconds old. Obviously the controller would need some time to note things down, so we're going to set 90 seconds in minutes and seconds, 1 minute 30 on the T parameter. Obviously in the time we have taken to receive the report, the target will have moved, but the VTB factors this in by extrapolating where it thinks the target will be, given those speed, heading and time parameters. It also factors in the time we have taken to input the information since pressing the initialization switch, indicated here by delta T. Once all the information has been inputted, we select Validate, VAL, on the first switch by moving it down. This creates a ghost contact, a dashed yellow capital M-like symbol, together with a vector arrow showing its heading. It is my intention to sneak up on this target, so I am going to switch off my radar and maneuver so that I am behind him and slightly below him, to try and remain undetected. Again, just like TAF, we have the same useful information about the ghost target at the top of the VTB. Okay, assuming the enemy has not changed speed or heading, I'm just behind him. I have my Super 530D selected, but I am going to locate him using the Magic's horizontal background search rather than the radar, so I don't appear on the enemy's radar warning receiver and give the game away. We do this by pressing the button on the PCA under Magic, and this will change the display to MAV, standing for Magic VE. Remember that the objective designation is only an approximation of where the target will be, so you will have to spot them yourself, but hopefully these magics will help us out. Let's have a look. Ah, brilliant. There he is. Now, I could switch to magics and get him with a heat seeker, but I'm going to attack with the Super 530D. So for quickness in acquiring the lock required, if you recall one of the tips from earlier, the Magic Slave to Radar button also works in reverse, as a Radar Slave to Magic button. I have a Magic IR lock indicated by the circle, so I'm going to slave the radar to it and quickly get off a 530D shot before he knows what's happening. Again, let's see if it works. So press the slave button, and we'll quickly switch it into a PSEC. Fox 1. His radar warning receiver will be lighting up like a Christmas tree, so he now knows I'm here. He's attempting some evasive maneuvers. Sorry sir, you didn't stand a chance. After the engagement, or at any time, the ghost objective will remain. To remove it, press the switch adjacent to RAS for reject. Well, as ever, I hope that was useful for you. The Mirage 2000C has some really cool features, especially in the interception department. We've managed to get through quite a lot in this tutorial, but remember, practice makes reasonably competent, so get out there and put our lessons to use. With superlative thanks to my patrons, the Rapscallion Yan 11 and the exemplary Lakota 21. Feel free to do the usual thing like subscribe, comment and share, but until next time, virtual aviators, I look forward to seeing you online in the skies. This is Reiver saying last call.